and welcome to tonight's edition of DeFacto Review English version. We bring to you the biggest stories shaping Mongolia. Here with us, commentator and economist Jargel DeFacto. Welcome.
Good evening, good evening.
And I am Milena Mendes. We're live on Facebook at MNB World page. And also we love to hear your thoughts. So on Twitter, join us with the hashtag Jargel_DeFacto. Coming up on the show tonight. Package of tax law reviewed. Would the pressures from tax authorities increase? And also we are going to bring to you the Minister of Justice and Internal Affairs speaks about Erdnet mining and Zarik's death case. But what did he not say? We're going to talk about it tonight as well. And finally, policy interest and consumer loan, towards which direction is the monetary policy developing? So to our first topic of the night. During an irregular session of the Mongolian parliament this past week, the package of tax law, which has been discussed for a year, was brought up again. Over the meeting, a vote was conducted to question the principle of the package of draft general taxation law and the other laws which were proposed with it. Now, the public opinion criticizes the draft law, saying it is too administrative and that no substantial changes have been made to increase the base of taxes. So, Jargel, we're going to start with this first question to explain to our viewers, as we have mentioned. This tax law has been at stake at the parliament for a year, and what do you believe to have been the reason why they had to bring it up again?
Finally, they were going to bring up anyway, but finally it happened last week. It's extraordinary sessions of the parliament. They discussed, and I think it was now went back to editing, and then next week there will be probably a voting, which will be the final. And the way the law goes is also have a lot of attention now. This general taxation law needed because it is the only kind of umbrella law which is talking about setting the level of taxations, the way how to collect, control, implement, who will collect and how, etc. The general taxation law is being discussed. But what we are not talking is about, it's just only gathering, collecting taxes. But we don't have a particular laws how to spend those taxes, what for, because it should be connected. In particular, some cases, some provisions of tax laws to be connected with collecting and the spending. Unfortunately, it is not the case. The other thing is local provinces. Out of collected taxes, they should keep remaining with themselves certain part of the law. Otherwise, Mongolia is too centralized. And for example, during the discussions of this law, a parliament member was suggesting to have a particular discount for area living, say, 500 kilometers away from Ulaanbaatar city. One case, then 1,000 kilometers away from Ulaanbaatar city, another more discount, etc. Instead of this geographical dimensions, for example, we could discuss by zones, one, and also instead of collecting all tax to the Ulaanbaatar, then giving back, the local tax can stay there. Mm-hmm. So then we have, we will have more decentralized society and country. And I think once local authorities have money for their own infrastructure development.
But do you think the local authorities are ready to deal with that?
Sooner or later we have to start now. Right. Even otherwise the people are completely migrating from countryside to Ulaanbaatar city. Ulaanbaatar people will leave for abroad. So that's what we are not discussing there. However, before changing any particular tax law, you should ask questions. Does it help private sector to create more value? Does it make their life easier or harder? Mm-hmm. So the answer was very much divided. Mm-hmm. And because with the increase of taxes, companies, actually this increase of taxes are paid by customers. Why? If tax is increasing, the company is increasing price.
The prices, yeah.
So we should understand that. And the other thing in our this law is Mongolian parliamentarians put taxes high, but then they have a lot exemptions. They discuss so many exceptions that at the end you think, why you have increased the law? So these sort of things are not asked properly or answered properly. But a good one positive thing was the remark by the Minister of Finance. He said that now we will have, every individual will have tax payment number, which gives a data about how much the person is earning and paying. And depending on the level of income a year, the people can be tax exempted. For example, for the houses, for example, not here in by Mongolian law, but the very positive thing, according to the international rule that ministry is bringing to the table, is everybody has now a tax payment number, and companies don't pay taxes for the employees. The employee themselves pays the taxes, which is quite some big burden here. And also, because the employee doesn't know exactly the company is paying for his or her taxes, social insurance, etc., they don't much care. In particular, young people don't care about that part that goes to the state as taxes. So if they know now how much they are paying themselves, now they will be more in position to demand the government to be transparent and responsible at the expense of the money.
So what else do you think that the people, what is in the best interest of the people to know regarding to this revision of the tax law? Because it's for the people.
People should know where the taxes go for. Because once they are collected, so how are they used? And with that, people understand to know exactly what is the role of the state, because the money goes for the covering cost of operations of the state, this huge machine. Then people also should understand that the sole role of the state is to protect your safety, your right, and your property. So for doing so, they need money to cover their costs. Legislation making, implementation, justice, or enforcement of the laws. So only this money should go towards those aids. Of course, also school, medical care, and the social needs, yes. But everything should be under the control of the people, not under the control of the state itself. Because the state tend to spend more money than they earn. That's why they create budget deficit. In a way, they don't have enough money inside of the country. They borrow money from abroad, which makes the value of national currency worse.
And then the population maybe is not even aware of that, of how much maybe it is actually being borrowed. And then taxes and interests grow and grow.
That's our role of media, to explain in very simple language to every citizen that we are paying taxes, not for the people working in the government have luxury, flying first class or...
Exactly.
So democracy means not only free elections, but it means participation. Participation in the accountability of the government. Otherwise, the government expenses should be restricted by law, if possible even by constitutions, so that they don't spend too much. And they tend to spend too much because it's other people's money.
Exactly. So I still have a last question for you. Can you please try and explain to our viewers, how do other countries actually deal with this revision of tax law? How often do they do that? The reasons why they do that?
Yeah, because in the democracies where, I mean, every 4 years you have new election, mostly you have a new state elected power. When they come, usually they come with on certain program to change the social and economic conditions in the state, and it is usually different than the government before. So almost all democracies change taxation laws depending on that, on their program they have promised. About the country like Mongolia, where we depended so much on commodity prices, which is also cyclical, sometimes more than the political cycle, but usually it is also reflected on the way how government have money, create money or tax because the economy, 85% of Mongolian export is coal and copper, and almost a half by each. And so the prices for those two commodities are important for making our budget working. And sometimes it's working very bad, sometimes working good. So when it does not have enough money, then they borrow. Unfortunately, last time they have borrowed, that time we had enough money, but still they have borrowed, and now we are paying this Chinggis Khan now, which degrading the Mongolian Tuareg.
Well, thank you very much, and we have to move on to our next topic of the night. Last Thursday, the 21st, the Minister of Justice and Internal Affairs, Nyamdar Tsend, gave statements on issues related to the Erdnet mine and the murder of Zorig Sanjasuren. Here's a quick background about Mr. Zorig to our foreign viewers. He was a leader in Mongolia's democracy movement back in the 90s. Zorig was also a member of the parliament from 92 to 96, and right after that, he became Minister of Infrastructure for the following 2 years. But what happened, he was murdered at his own home in October of 98, but the case on his death has still been unsolved. So back to Minister Nyamdar's statements. He announced the government decision to change the status of Erdnet Mining Corporation to a state-owned enterprise. In his speech about the 49% of the EMC, the Minister of Justice and Internal Affairs pointed out the judges. And he still said, the mafia and organized criminal groups will exist in Mongolia in the future or not? Mongolian state will answer for this question. And for the murder of Minister Zorig, Nyamdar raised issues of tortures. It is a big topic also to be discussed. And what is the reason behind this decision to turn Erdnet mining into a state-owned company? And is that decision also from the court?
It is not. It is by the government and by the parliament. And recently we are experiencing big fight between legislatures, governments, and the enforcement agencies, prokuror we call it, and also the anti-corruption agency. And we have actually a major war in between three branches of the power. Here the decision is made by the government because the court, the prosecutors would not move in spite of many times requests. So they have at least, it is still some kind of resolution, but it should be, because it's the case where shares, properties, businesses, this sort of decisions usually made by the court, which is not the case here. And now they have announced officially that in 100% now this Erdnet Mining Corporation is belonging to the state. But I would like to talk more about the second, his statement about the Zorig case, murder case. That's crucial statement he made. He said, it turned out there are 3 people already sentenced to prison for 22, 24, 25 years, 1 lady, 1 woman, and 2 persons. And now what he's saying, that no, they are not murders. They had to accept that is under the torture. This is like a thunder in a sunny day for us, because we remember 1930s, under Stalin regime in instruction, Mongolia had a big repression, and we have Mongolians, the government that time killed about 40,000 Mongolians, mostly educated Mongolians, being a spies of imperialism, Japan, whatever. And that was, everybody had to accept the blame under the torture. So if it is the case that these 3 persons were sentenced to in a wrong way, then the Mongolian peoples will demand very seriously from the prosecutor of the country the truth. Because prosecutor is by law the only institutions who is registering all crimes, who is making sure that all registration of crimes, the questioning, then later on in sentencing, all this goes by law. And it turned out, if these 3 persons, according to this minister, and I don't think Minister of Justice has a right to lie. If he's a lie, get him into the prison. Otherwise, the prosecutor has full responsibility for that wrongdoing of our court system.
Do you think there was any negligence there? This government versus court?
Even worse, I think. It was made on the purpose. That's what my personal take. And I demand the prosecutor goes to public and explains why is it happening. And you know, there's very crazy terms among our politicians. They are fighting with each other, but they say that because he's nominated for 6 years, we cannot change him. No. If he had allowed the crime, the highest crime, that making torture in this democratic Mongolia after 30 years of this revolution. This guy and his team, everybody should go themselves to prison. And that's what we will demand. That's Mongolian public will not accept it because we have not changed the society for few people to have such a violation of the human rights in this country. So concerning 49%, once it's belonging now to the government, they want to change the CEO, Patam Suren now, and there is a name comes Hirling, who is the head of a department in the Ministry of Mining and Heavy Industry. So it is still to go, but the main point he was raising is that this 49% of money, the shares from Russia was bought by public money, $400 million US. That's what the Minister of Justice is saying. If they bought truly with our money, our shares, then you should have responsibility. TDB will have responsibility. Mm-hmm. If the ministry is lying, then he should take responsibility. So please tell us to understand, help us to understand correctly.
Do you think
which
there's
one
something behind those statements? Something that maybe is not being said to the population?
Not only. There are many things hidden. They cannot prove, but we know is the behavior of this bank is not just by chance. We know that bank, but I don't know how many other entities doing the same thing, because the state lost control, and the corruption is so rampant that even some institutions can use public money to buy public goods for themselves. So on. So this is a big test of democracy and justice in today's society, and Mongolians demand the truth. One thing, for example, according again to the Minister of Justice, TDB had made new headquarters, the beautiful white building with a big TV screen in the center. Mm-hmm. The cost estimated, according to Minister of Nyamdor, not me, mm-hmm. He said that this whole building cost 27 billion tugriks. But he sold 2 floors for the same price, 27 billion tugriks, to Development Bank of Mongolia. And it turned out also he sold, the TDB sold for a half of the price, 13 billion. Another floor to Mongolian, the Hypothec Corporation, or Mongolian, the mortgage corporations. If it is true, how come whole building is just sold to both state mostly related companies?
A piece is missing in this puzzle, huh?
Very big things. And I think it has to do a lot with the recently quitted speaker, or resigned or kicked out speaker. And it is also money that has to do link with the speculation of Ulaanbaatar land for years. And the TDB owner owns also UB Bank, Ulaanbaatar Bank. Somehow it was diluted, the owner's shares were diluted for years, and finally he owns 100%, almost 2 banks. Mm-hmm. I think he's 90+% in the TDB and 99% with UB Bank. And according to new recent amendments of Mongolian banking law, one person cannot own 2 banks. Mm-hmm. So probably something is happening. Should be happening at least.
We'll see if that story develops. Unfortunately, we have to move on to our last topic of the night. The Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Mongolia held its regular meeting this last Thursday, coming up with an important decision. The committee did decide not to change the policy interest and keep it at 11%. They did not make alterations because there was no rapid change on the economy, which is stable. But the Bank of Mongolia did impose a 60% ceiling on the debt-to-income ratio. Back in July last year, the Monetary Policy Committee had imposed it at 70%. So, moving on to some questions to explain to our viewers what is going on. What impacts do you believe we can foresee on the Mongolian economy after this decision made by the Bank of Mongolia by decreasing this ratio in 10%?
Well, it's at the level of 11. They don't change. If it will go down, it means the inflation should be down. Otherwise, today's inflation level is 6.9%, and the policy rate, central bank policy rate is 11%. And there is also about 4% differences, which is understandable because this policy rate is also the rate where any commercial banks keep their money with the account of Mongol Bank. They receive that amount, estimated 4 days per year, per annum rate, interest rate 11%. And it's to be close to that, with the differences, inflation and other risks of the country. So I think it is to be related close to the bank saving rate and bank loan rate, because bank, instead of, if it has any difficulty, instead of giving a loan, they can keep it 11% interest in the Mongol bank, which, if this policy rate decreases, bank more tend to give more loan to the economy, which is good, normal. But however, Mongolian loan interest rate is so high, it's very hard to survive for companies making 18%, 17%, paying to Mongol Bank for the money they have got as a loan, and still to make some profit. It's almost impossible. In terms of the ratio between debt and income ratio, it has to do with the consumer loan, because Mongolia is quite very much banked country, say bank capitalized country in a way. Bank is 95% of Mongolian capital market source, financial market source. Capital market is only 5-6% of the financing of the economy. So banking are important player in the economy. So banks we have 15 banks, but 4 of them owns 80% of all total asset, and the TDB is one of them. With the bigger bank, they can give more loan to bigger companies for longer term, which is not, Mongolian banks are not at such a level that they can provide loans for 10, 20 years. It's more risky, you see. So people start to borrow money, even those who retirees also borrow a lot of money, and they are borrowing money against the future income of their pension payment. But it became so high that at times they are paying only the bank costs, loan, the related sum of the total loan and interest rate per month. And that payment was at times more than, say, 80% of their total income, which makes them they're living impossible, miserable, because not only 20% of your income you leave. Yeah, you cannot afford it. It's very expensive. So what they do is, Mongol Bank had raised that ratio to 70% last year. The end of last year, and now it is decreasing to 60%. 60% of your monthly income can go only to cover your loan. So that's why the commercial banks are warned. They are informed that they cannot lend to anybody where he can spend more than 60% of monthly income for loan, which in a way depends their rights, but which is also important for the economy.
It has been said that the central bank could be folding the consumer loans. What is your thought on that? And why would it be doing that?
Because, again, consumer loans are still expensive.
Yeah.
It's 16-17%. it is more profit to the bank, though the person needs money, that's why he has borrowing money, but still it is 70% of whatever he earns pays as interest rate to the loan. It's expensive, isn't it?
It is.
First. Secondly, when the person is paying about 60% of their income, remaining 40% are for the economy, for his own expenses, right? Eating, food, the clothes, whatever other demands. If the demands of each household goes down, it slowly brings the downward directions of the supply. And that's very bad for economy, because growth of economy is growth of supply, growth of consumption. If consumption shrinks, supply shrinks, economy goes down. So that's why they try, because it's expensive, to withhold the extension of the consumer loans.
What do you think can be a solution for that?
The total solution of decreasing of interest rate is key. For that, inflation should be down to the level 2-3%, the most, like any other developed countries. Mm-hmm. For that, the reason why inflation is growing is a lot depends on the structure of the economy we have here, and we have a lot dependent on the prices of commodities, coal and copper. So because of this dependence, and plus it also depends on how prudent is Mongolian government spending tax money. They are not, looks like, because when they don't have a money, they borrow international money, and then it is very expensive. When at the time when we don't have much capacity of producing products for export other than mining, then we are little to earn foreign currency. Yet we pay foreign currency debt at any time, at the time required, which truly destroys the capacity of Mongolian tugriks, because more dollars going out, mm-hmm. and we are not earning money in dollar. We do it in tugriks. So we need very clear ratio of between two tugriks. One. Secondly, the government is to be very careful with their spending for things, otherwise we're not required much. Look, when you are in big debt, you cannot have a luxury life. You just keep strong, but tightening your belt. Mm-hmm. That's a situation in Mongolia.
Well, we're coming almost to the end of the show. And Jargal, I'd like to see, do you have any final comments, any final thoughts on what happened? What do you think we can expect for this week? Decisions?
Mongolia at the verge of making better life or worse, going to democracy or dictatorship. If the justice will prevail in the society, if we will have a right answer to all these crazy things happening, then we will be stronger as a society. That's what we are striving for today, and I think the public will make final decisions on the political power next year. In 15 months we have general elections, so the two political parties better to be better institutions if they can, more justice institutions if they can, for the remaining time. If they don't, the time will be ticking for them to go out.
And also for the population to be pressuring them, because we have rights.
That's the whole thing of our program.
Yeah.
That's because we can discuss it like this in this country. Today I had a program in Mongolian, also in the Russian, so that then I believe that we have this intrinsic power to win.
Right.
Okay, the future of Mongolia looks more brighter.
It certainly is. And speaking of future, we're going to be back next Sunday at 7 p.m. So tune in at MNB World to learn more about what's going on with the politics and economy of Mongolia. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you later next week.
Have a good night, Mongolia.